I am Taylor Wright.
I am Vanessa Neva.
And I'm Ariel Fontaine.
And we are exploring the betrayal of the body.
Okay. The purpose of this topic, our basic question is it ethical to consider non-consensual sex as a rape with biological indicators that would prove otherwise? With this topic, we plan to explore the biological and ethical points of these questions, bringing into consideration the actual definition of what a rape is. The body tends to show very strong language when in these certain situations, like the release of dopamine or the sign of pleasure by moaning or by curling of the feet. And they all indicate to the opposing partner that this person is enjoying it. But is it right to ignore the simple fact that this person may have verbally stated a no? Words in this case become very more powerful than actions and are the first step to taking the affirmative action to stop the situation of rape. The body portrays the real feelings of the human, and only one of the two people involved in the situation can distinguish that the language of the body does not necessarily speak the truth. The TOK application that we'll have in this is ethics. We'll incorporate moral reasoning, value judgments, and the moral principle, and moral relativism. And science will include the biological indicators. With moral reasoning, having morals is like having an opinion. Like, for example, I stated here, having scrambled eggs. One say that they don't, but that they don't like it. But the only way to make their statements reasonable is to say why they don't like it. And the same thing goes for moral values. It's okay to have your own opinion on a certain subject, but the only way to make it justifiable is by providing reason as to why your judgment is the way it is. And value judgment is one's view/judgment of a certain topic. And we expect people to justify their value judgment and support them with reason. The justification for a rape is a reason in which many would be very stubborn to agree with. This can be explained because of the way society has brought us to believe that the forceful penetration of one's body is supposed to be seen as painful or not desirable. Our value judgments, or at least of the ones who view rape as disturbing, have been shaped from what our surroundings have perceived this situation to be. Moral principle. When trying to consider one's value judgments, we naturally have to refer to the moral principle of what society thinks, the majority opinion. When arguing about ethical questions, one usually considers whether or not the person is being consistent with their judgments, or whether or not the facts of their judgments are true. In many cases, the moral principle for a certain case can lead to the value judgment of that case. For instance, when hearing about a girl who had sex with her boyfriend, but then during the sex decided she was not ready and verbally said no, but the boyfriend kept going to penetrate her body. The moral principle of the situation may be that this is a rape after the moment that she said no. But is there a certain law that incorporates this moral principle?
Moral relativism refers to the way we see the world and our values, which are determined by the society we grow up in. Therefore, it is understood that there are no universal values. Our world is full of hundreds of thousands of cultures, so moral practices suggest that there are no objective moral values across the world. So there may be cases in which rape may not exist, leaving all sex to be consensual, no victims, and no options. But in a country like the United States, a person may fall victim to rape. But when a person is being raped, the body can still respond differently from the mind. And when this happens, what role does moral relativism play? In a society like the one I was brought up in, rape is considered to be wrong. Under any circumstances, rape is a serious crime. So under my beliefs, rape is non-consensual sex, whether the body responds positively or not. If the body says yes, that is something that can't be controlled because there are natural chemicals that the body may release during a sense of pleasure.
Alright. And then you have a Gloucester.
I'm turning it.
How do you blow up the block? Or can I just go using like this?
F11.
Well, our Gloucester is about rape and the biological indicators of consent. First, I will introduce a scenario in which the biological indicators of consent are brought up within society. A man and a woman just ended their date. They return to the man's car and consensual intercourse ensues. However, within the act, the woman wanted him to stop, but he continued. She later claims that the man raped her. The moral principle would be that rape is ethically wrong. But here are the facts. Under Indian Penal Code Section 375, a man or woman is said to have committed rape when the sexual intercourse is forced, achieved without consent, or if the consent was given under intoxication or an unsound mind. If any form of desire is present, vaginal lubrication, or the secretion of sex-linked hormones, then the sexual act cannot be considered rape. That's an actual law that's especially what Maryland's law is based off. So in a way, if your body portrays a feeling of consent, or that they find the act pleasurable and it's proven that the act was pleasurable, if you later on go on to claim that you've been raped by somebody and they can prove that you actually wanted it, you can't claim it was rape, and the law won't, like, the courts won't, like, they will probably acquit the rapist. Yeah, the case will be dismissed. Neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphin, and prolactin have been proven to become present in the body either before, during, or after sex. The chemical most acutely linked to a sexual orgasm is prolactin. This chemical triggers the body to have a decreased feeling of excitement after the overstimulation of sex. Prolactin levels can be high even days after sex, and this makes a good indicator for determining whether a sexual act was considered consensual or indeed rape. However, in the state of Maryland, consensual sex, that is sex with biological indicators of consent, cannot become rape. This law denies a man or woman of the right to change his or her mind during sexual intercourse, and allows a man or woman to continue the sexual intercourse, to consider the sexual act even if consent from the victim is recanted. So basically, in Maryland law, if you and your boyfriend or significant other begin to have sex and you decide that you don't want to continue the act, he can continue even though you don't want it, or she can continue even though you don't want it, and that's under Maryland law. There was a case 3 years ago from 3 kids in Montgomery County, where one was 16, 17, and the girl was 19. She and the boys went out. They came back late. One of the boys later had sex with her in the car, and he was done. And then later on, the other guy who was in the car, he was also like, yeah, you want to do it? And she was like, yeah. And then he specifically said, well, I'm not going to rape you, repeatedly to her. But they still had sex. But later on, when she got home and she was talking to her best friend, she realized that she didn't want to have the sex, and that she realized that she had said no, and that, like, she realized that she had been raped. But when the case went to trial, the judge actually had the man convicted of rape. But when he appealed the case, the charges were dismissed, because under Maryland law, if you consent to sex in the beginning, you basically don't have the right to change your mind. And I'll show you guys some videos about that.
The only thing that's yes is yes. Just because there's no, that doesn't mean there's a yes. Right? In order for it to be yes, there has to be something said. A consent has to be created. Right? Now there's a name for my view. It's called the affirmative consent standard. For there to be consent, there must be some affirmation. Consent must be created. When I think of this, I think of something my driver's ed teacher said to me while I was learning to drive a car. Now, I took driver's ed when I was 17. I'm now 59. So this has stayed with me for a considerable number of years. We were discussing the principle of the right-of-way. And my driver's ed teacher said, the right-of-way is not something you have. The right-of-way is something the other driver gives you. And if the other driver doesn't give it to you, you don't have it. No matter what you think the rules of the road are supposed to be, or what you think you're entitled to. And if people really understood that, there would be a lot fewer tragic collisions on the roads. Consent is like that. Consent is not something you have. Consent is something the other person has to give you. And if the other person doesn't give it to you, you don't have it. No matter what you think the rules are supposed to be, or what you think you're entitled to. That's the affirmative consent standard. Now here's my sort of bottom line for endorsing that and recommending it to you. Often in philosophy, the way to decide on one position is to see there's a fork in the road, and what happens if we take the other view. Right? If you don't have the affirmative consent standard, you are saying that what's in place is green light. Go ahead. If you don't have the affirmative consent standard, you are endorsing a world in which other people have right of access to your body without expressly asking you for permission to have that access. That's what you are saying if you don't endorse an affirmative consent standard. If you say the default mode is go ahead until somebody stops me, or until there's a stop, right? I think if we really think about it, no one is really willing to live in a world like that. I don't think any of us would really endorse the lack of an affirmative consent standard if we really understood what's at stake. So that's my bottom line here. Now I'm going to spell out some other implications, some other aspects of this. I said consent has to be created. Something has to be said. Someone raised the issue of body language. Right? I'm going to hold out for the standard. What's required is explicit verbal consent. That's the standard I'm going to hold out for. The danger in body language is that it's just too easily misinterpreted. And if you misinterpret, if you get it wrong, if you're reading someone's body language and you think you have consent when you really don't, we need to start using language of directly talking about what we're talking about. We're talking about sexual assault. We're talking about rape. I am not accusing people of intentionally misinterpreting. So these are situations where emotions are running high, things may be getting hot and heavy, it may be very too easy to read in a misinterpretation of the signals in all good faith. I really thought. It's just too dangerous.
Under Maryland state laws, you would think that there would be the will of the person and they would take into consideration what the victim would want, but they don't. So we feel that it is ethically incorrect for a person who was raped or they felt that they were raped during an act of non-consensual sex. We feel that it's ethically wrong to let their rapist get away with the crime. And according to Dr. Harry Broad, you can see that consent can only be given. And so when it is given, the person should stop.
And when consent is given, like, without it, I mean, as a female especially, you feel like your body's being penetrated, like, forcefully. It's just not, it wouldn't seem like it's a good feeling, because if you verbally already stated your no, and we all have the choice of whether or not to change our mind, you know, you might be getting into it, and then you realize that maybe this isn't the right time or the right thing to do as of now. And so, if she's to say no, I mean, yeah, it's sudden, but it's just something that he should understand, I guess. And if he keeps on going, according to this video, to Dr. Harry Broad, then it will be considered a rape, basically.
Because you have to think about how when you're in the act of sex, your emotions are running high. Some people are thinking or are clearly engaged within the act, and then as a girl, something else might be running through your mind, especially if it's your first time having sex. You might think, is it gonna hurt? Is he gonna talk to me afterwards? Like, different emotions are coming into your body, so you might feel as though I should stop right now and consider what the actions are and the repercussions of my actions will be. So if I were to be having sex and I feel as though I'm not ready and I tell my significant other to stop, I feel as though they don't have a right to continue going, especially if I am completely new to the whole act of having sex. That would feel like almost as if somebody is like going through a ravishing within my body. It wouldn't be like a happy feeling. So I feel as though like the law in Maryland should be changed, because you can't necessarily tell a person that they don't have the right to change their mind, or they don't have the right to decide for themselves what they want, because basically this law is telling you you are committed to your first consent. So it's basically saying you better be sure that you're ready to have sex before you engage in it, which is a good idea, but in reality, people have the right to change their mind every day. You can decide whether to kill a person or not to. You can decide to rape a person or not to, and you can decide to listen to my voice or not to listen to my voice. I'll show you guys the next video.
Let's begin this half hour with the arrest of Pro Football Hall of Famer Lawrence Taylor. We're going to talk exclusively to his lawyer and his agent in a moment, but first NBC's Peter Alexander has the latest. Peter, good morning to you.
Matt, good morning. Nice to see you. Lawrence Taylor has had plenty of run-ins with the law, but never anything like this. Charges of raping a 16-year-old girl who police say was beaten and then forced to meet Taylor at his hotel. When police arrived early Thursday morning, Taylor was asleep, but when he woke up, it was another legal nightmare. Leaving a suburban New York City courthouse Thursday, 51-year-old Lawrence Taylor faced a crush of cameras and harsh new allegations. Police say Taylor had sex with his 16-year-old runaway Thursday morning at this Holiday Inn.
The investigation indicates that Mr. Taylor engaged in sexual intercourse with a child less than 17, for which he paid the victim $300.
Wearing black and handcuffs, Taylor appeared nervous in court. His sexual encounter, investigators say, was arranged by a pimp who punched and kicked the girl, drove her to Taylor's hotel, and told her she had to have sex with the former NFL star. Once considered the most feared defensive player in football, Lawrence Taylor tried to showcase his softer side on last year's Dancing with the Stars. Taylor's attorney insists his client is innocent.
My client did not have sex with anyone. No, period, amen.
In the past, Taylor hasn't shied away from his fondness for prostitutes during his playing days.
Knock on the door, and you open the door, and you got two beautiful women sitting there like, wait for you. I'm like, you're in the right place.
The troubled athlete has struggled with drug addiction and has had several run-ins with the law.
In the past, he's been involved with crack cocaine arrests at least 3 times, with tax evasion in 2000. He was put on probation for filing false returns and evading the IRS.
A&E recently profiled Taylor as part of a new documentary called Fame and Recovery, re-airing next month.
Let me take a hit of this, and I'll worry about that tomorrow. And, that's the drugs do.
Now facing allegations of rape, another troubled chapter in the saga of one of sports' greatest stars. Authorities say the victim, again a teenage runaway, sent a text message to her uncle after the alleged assault, and her uncle then alerted police. The alleged pimp, his name is Rasheed Davis, was also arrested on charges of assault and unlawful imprisonment. If convicted of rape, Lawrence Taylor could face up to 4 years behind bars. All right, Peter.
Okay. Well, in this case, there's a part where there's the whole lack of consent, especially with rape with a minor. It seems that the betrayal of the body thing with the minor is even more drastic, because as a minor, when you're having sex with a person who's significantly older than you, especially under forced conditions, your body could be going haywire, and especially under that, your body might mistake fear for excitement, because it's common within the scientific journal I was reading yesterday, where they say that sometimes your body switches up different emotions. Like when you might sense fear, and it's also known as a fetish, where people will bring fear into sexual relationships because it increases the high or the pleasure sense of the action. So like with this girl, he claims he never had sex with her, but she knows good and well that within the act, this was a clear sign of when consent was not given, but how he continued to go through without the act anyway. And this case shows you that with cases like this, is more clear-cut, because it was a place where she was forced into the situation. Under the penal code, when you're forced to have sex or coerced, it's considered rape completely and positively. But with the other ones, where there was consent initially, but then the consent was recanted, the lines within the law was blurred. Go ahead.
Well, like Vanessa said, when consent is first given and then one changes their mind, the lines become more blurry, because it's like the different emotions running through both of the partners' head, definitely. Because the girl, for her it's more of an emotional thing because it's her, she's the one who's being penetrated in the first place. And when she states a no, it's like, I don't know, the dude could be thinking that maybe she's being fake, or maybe like she's just not ready. And at this point, the dude, like, he should have the right to say, I mean, he has the right to say no, that they shouldn't go on because she's already stated her no, like Dr. Harry Potter said.
We are constantly talking about rape of a female, but there's also been an instance where a man was raped. A woman came into his room and she was disguised as his significant other, and so she began to have a sexual intercourse with him. And when he finally realized that that was not his significant other, he clearly stated that he no longer wanted to have sex. He attempted to push her off, but his body could not respond in the same way. And so an ejaculation occurred, and can we say that he was really raped? Although he clearly stated consent and he attempted to push her off, he did all he could do to make the sex stop, but his body responded in different ways.
Also, and one of the sources that we use for this presentation is from a science journal. They said how the dominance between the male and the female also has a lot to do with this as well, because it takes a lot for someone to say a dude was raped, and there are not many cases where one can say that a dude was raped. When a female is raped, it's seen as more emotion is evoked from it because of like what we stated before about how she's the one where her body's the one that's being penetrated. But when a dude is raped, it's just that sense of emotion is there, but it's not evoked as powerfully as when a girl is raped. And so this power dominance, in the case of consensual or non-consensual sex, it has a lot to do with it because the females know will, like, what am I trying to say? Male dominance basically has a lot to do with this.
Well, the male dominance that the scientific journal talked about was consent or lack of consent between males and females. But there's also one between males and males, or females and females, where they were to have sexual relationships, homosexual sexual relationships, especially where it's a male and a male. That male could considerably claim rape because he would be penetrated through, or he would have anal penetration. So in a sense, he would, even if his body were to resound pleasure sense, because the male orgasm spot is within through the anal penetration, he may have claimed that he did not want, he probably claimed that he didn't want it, but since his body reacted otherwise, the raper, the rapist would probably feel as though something is going right and that he actually has the right to continue even though the person said that. I'm going to show you guys a video about our own personal perspective on that topic.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Neva. I'm Ariel, okay, and I'm Taylor Wright. Our topic is it more ethical to consider unconsensual sex rape if they're biological entities of consent? Well, basically, you have to consider what a rape is and whether it's consensual or unconsensual. According to Dr. Harry Broad, yes is yes and no is no. If there isn't a verbal agreement as to the partner wanted to have sex or not, then it's not considered consensual sex. At this point, it can be considered a rape. But the fine line between whether or not consensual sex or whether it's rape is very thin and blurry. So at this point, this is what our topic is basically trying to discuss. Whether there are other indicators of whether or not to distinguish the difference between consensual
based on personal opinions. We have 25 minutes left.
To consideration that you said no, he's gonna keep on going, like how can I feel or thing. Body language is a very strong thing in which we use on a regular basis to discern different characteristics of people. If your sexual partner is seeing that your body language is actually enjoying the act, he won't really be hearing the no, because maybe he's on a higher level, so to speak. He'll just be feeling your body contracting with his body. So it's kind of hard to say that he raped you because you said no while that was occurring. And you have to think of the ways the man is feeling as he's trying to go, because at this point he's enjoying it. At this point he wants to keep going. And when the woman he randomly decides to say no, I mean, I don't know, personally he might be fake. Or he might, like, he's not going to take into consideration that he said no, he's going to keep on going, like, how can I forgive her thing? And that's where a firm no or firm, keep going, that's where the affirmative consent standard.
Teachers and students, pardon me this interruption. At this time, we are passing out report cards, delivering report cards to every classroom.